Hi, Tutum sisters, allies, and loved ones. Welcome to the inaugural Childless by Infertility Virtual Forum presented by Tutum Global in partnership with Not So Mommy and in collaborative support with Resolve, the National Infertility Association. I'm Jobi Tyson, the founder of Tutum Global, a multimedia platform for childless women. And I'm so glad you're here today. I'm focusing on the key issues to make a difference on the pressing issues that face the childless not by choice community. But I will tell you, 20, 10, even 5 years ago, I never could have imagined that I would inadvertently become a leader in female childlessness. But as someone who had unexplained infertility for 20 years until a hysterectomy uncovered endometriosis and adenomyosis, I turned my pain into purpose to change the way female childlessness is presented, analyzed, and discussed. As Tutum Global's community are women who are childless not by choice and childless by circumstance, this conversation comes at the close of National Infertility Awareness Week, a movement founded by Resolve in 1989. So today we're focusing on women who are childless by infertility. So I'm so thankful to be joined by all of you throughout the world, allies and childless women alike. Glad that you're a part of this critical conversation. I'm looking forward to starting our discussion with our panel of experts. So let me just walk you through how the forum will go. So today we have assembled a panel of experts who are experts in the field of infertility and female childlessness. We're going to give each one of them an opportunity to talk for about 5 minutes. And in between each panelist, we're going to have a 30-second break so you can take a snack break and so we can transition to the next panelist. And then if you have any questions, you'll have an opportunity to ask them live on the Q&A after all the panelists are done with their presentations. And if you have a question while they're speaking on top of your mind, go ahead and post it, and I'll make sure to find that in the queue a little later. If you have comments throughout the forum, please post your comments, and I'll post those when I'm able to as well. So we have you listening from Facebook, and also YouTube if you're watching this live, and our private Facebook group for the Tutum Sister Circle. So just post from there and we'll find you. We'll get your comments and your questions. And if you're on the Facebook group, if you have not opted to show your name, you will remain anonymous and your post or comments will show up as Facebook user. So, and after our panelists are over with the live Q&A, stick around because we will have WNBA champion Simone Edwards closing with a phenomenal keynote speech. So before we get started with the panel, make sure you like, thumbs up, share this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page. And although this is a free event, this is also a fundraiser. So please donate. The partial proceeds will go to Resolve, the National Infertility Association, who are really working hard with advocacy and education and awareness for the infertility community. And will also go to other initiatives for the childless not by choice community. And we'll also have a raffle for anyone who gives $10 or more. You will get a signed copy of Unstoppable, a book written by Simone Edwards, WNBA champion, and also a virtual meet and greet with her. And she's a phenomenal spirit. And if you give anything in increments of $10, you'll be entered every time. And if you give $50 or more, you automatically win. And that does not count against the 8 winners. So tomorrow is the deadline for that. Tomorrow, April 25th at 11:59 p.m. So now it is my great pleasure to welcome Brandi Lytle to share a few remarks. Brandi is an entrepreneur, founding blogger of Not So Mommy, and Perinatal Loss and Involuntary Childlessness Alliance ambassador, and part of Tutum Journal, our magazine for and by childless women. She's on the editorial team. She also graciously partnered with Tutum Global for National Infertility Awareness Week. Brandi is also the creator of the Childless Not by Choice Awareness Olive Ribbon. So please join me in welcoming Brandi Lytle. Hey, Brandi.
Hi, Jobi. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. As Jobi said, I am the founder of Not So Mommy, an infertility and childless not by choice blog. And after starting my blog in August of 2017, I began to share awareness ribbons relevant to our community. such as the orange infertility awareness ribbon, yellow endometriosis awareness ribbon, and the pink and blue ribbon for pregnancy and infant loss, just to name a few. And as I shared those, Not So Mommy community members began to comment that we Childless needed an awareness ribbon of our own. So in July 2018, I created the olive green Childless Not by Choice awareness ribbon. I chose olive green because the color green represents new beginnings, growth, hope, renewal, healing, compassion, perseverance, tenacity, self-awareness, and harmony of body and soul. Olive green specifically is the color of peace, and it represents wisdom, compassion for humanity, harmony, and self-love. And I believe these characteristics describe our Childless Not by Choice community perfectly, who we are and what we strive to be. No matter the situation that brought you to a childless life, the olive green CNBC awareness ribbon is a symbol for all childless, by chance, by circumstance, and by infertility. In fact, it's even for those who aren't childless but want to show their support for the strong men and women who are grieving dreams lost and trying to find joy despite heartbreak. That's a big reason I love awareness ribbons, because they're one way to bring people together. And my hope is that the olive green Childless Not by Choice awareness ribbon will help the conversation to grow, the education to continue, and the isolation to diminish. And I am so honored that the Childless Not by Choice awareness ribbon has been part of owning our voice during National Infertility Awareness Week 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandi.
Thank you, Jobi.
I am so thrilled to introduce our dynamic panel of incredibly impactful women. To start off our panel discussion, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to one of the most important voices on infertility, Barbara Collura, the President CEO of Resolve, the National Infertility Association, a 47-year-old organization at the forefront of issues facing the infertility community. Barb is a nationally recognized expert on infertility and the family building journey. She has worked with the World Health Organization on infertility definitions and clinical guidelines, and worked with the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists on their clinical definitions on infertility. A frequent guest speaker at medical conferences, Barb is an expert on public policy issues facing the infertility community that impact both patient access and clinical care. In 2014, Barb received the Distinguished Service Award from the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. Prior to joining Resolve, Barb served as a volunteer for several years. She also received an undergraduate degree from the University of Montana and her Master's of Arts degree from the International Affairs from American University. Please join me in welcoming Barb Collura. Hi, Barb.
Hey, Jobi. Thank you so much for having me, and what a great program. I'm just really honored to be here.
Absolutely. I first like to take the opportunity to just recognize you, Rebecca Flick, and the Resolve team for supportively collaborating with the Childless by Infertility community for National Infertility Awareness Week to ensure that all infertility narratives were included to bring greater awareness to infertility, particularly resulting in childlessness on a larger scale. So I'm so glad that you're here to add to this important conversation.
Well, like I said, I'm really honored to be here, and we have so enjoyed getting to know you and the work that you're doing, and really just applaud your leadership. It's incredible.
Thank you. So Barb, with National Infertility Awareness Week being the largest U.S. awareness campaign addressing the public health issue of infertility, can you share with us the impact of National Infertility Awareness Week, and also talk about the current state of the public health issue of infertility and the work ahead?
Well, National Infertility Awareness Week is, as you said, it's a publicly recognized health observance. So what does that mean? It's an opportunity for us to raise awareness amongst the general public. It doesn't do any good for us to talk to each other. We really need to kind of turn outside of our community and use this as a platform to really educate the masses. For a lot of us, that might be just simply talking about your infertility and your struggles building your family with your own network, the people you work with, your neighbors, your own family, and use that. We hear a lot of people who use National Infertility Awareness Week as an opportunity to maybe share for the very first time the struggles that they're going through in building their family. And we hear this on and all the time. So that's what it is. And the media has really picked up on National Infertility Awareness Week. We saw stories this week on the Today Show, on CNN.com. We came out with a campaign with Chrissy Teigen on Monday of this past week. So it is also a really great way for the media to focus on this important issue. And look, people can do whatever they want with National Infertility Awareness Week. It's not as if Resolve, owns it, and you can't to have your own creative ways of recognizing it, but use it however it feels right for you. One of the things that I think is really important is that we ensure that people understand that infertility is a disease, that many people struggle to build their family. They might be a single woman, they might be in a same-sex relationship. And what is it that they're desiring and wanting? And so I think we have to understand it's a journey, and that people have all different kinds of ways that their journey looks to them. And there's no right or wrong journey. Everybody has their own. One of the things that people ask me about Resolve, they're like, well, don't you tell people what to do? And I said, no, we are here to provide support. A huge part of the infertility and family building journey is the emotional struggle. And so we want to make sure that people have that emotional support and community. We also want to ensure that you're making informed decisions about where you go here. There's no straight line. Everybody's journey seems to be very crooked, and in every turn, you're faced with more decisions that you need to make. Our hope is that that people have support, that their journey doesn't break them either emotionally or financially. And so the work that we do is really about how can we ensure that we are doing everything we can to support the community. So you mentioned access to care. We do a tremendous amount in the arena of insurance coverage. Look, a lot of us don't even ever get the care we need because our insurance doesn't cover it. So you don't even have that choice. We want people to have options and choices, and to be able to do whatever feels right for them. Our community includes your community too, Jobi, and I want to ensure that your followers believe and understand that we see you, we hear you, and we appreciate the community that you bring and the education that you bring to all of us. So, Jobi.
Now is my great pleasure to introduce the voice of the childless generation, and sometimes called the Beyonce of childlessness, Jody Day. It's hard to think of anyone who's played a greater role in shaping the global conversation as a thought leader on female involuntary childlessness over the last decade than Jody Day. She is the founder of Gateway Women, the global friendship and support network for childless women, with a social media reach of 2 million. So celebrating its 10th anniversary this month. Chosen as one of BBC's 100 women in 2013, she is the author of Living the Life Unexpected: How to Find Hope, Meaning, and a Fulfilling Future Without Children. Jody is an integrative psychotherapist, a TEDx speaker, a social entrepreneur, a founding and former board member of Aging Well Without Children, and a former fellow in social innovation at Cambridge Judge Business School. She lives in Ireland, where she is working on a novel and her Conscience Childless Elder Women project. In short, there is no one quite like Jody Day. And we are thrilled to have her here today. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you, Jobi. Your introductions are always just the best. Thank you.
A happy 10th anniversary to Gateway Women. We thank you for
Thank
all
you.
of your tireless work and all that you've been doing and have done on behalf of involuntarily childless women.
It's a pleasure. I mean, it's been an extraordinary journey over a decade, and a lot has changed, and for the better, I'm very pleased to say.
Well, as you know, 1 in 5 women will remain childless, and for 90% of them, it was not by choice. Yet,
That's right.
Despite these figures, grieving from infertility, and particularly infertility leading to childlessness, isn't routinely acknowledged or validated. And because of this, I always say grieving is hard, but disenfranchised grief can be traumatizing. So can you explain disenfranchised grief and how it can be managed to gain a sense of emotional peace?
Absolutely. I'll do my best in this short introduction. Thank you. So disenfranchised grief, I mean, the word disenfranchised, it's a bit of a mouthful. You know, what does it really mean? And really what it means is grief that is not allowed, you're not allowed to experience, you're not allowed to talk about. It's really a grief which is socially unacceptable. That's what disenfranchised grief is. It was identified by Professor Kenneth Doka in his work in the late 1980s and has really become a major source of research in the kind of professional grief community. Another way of thinking of it, which is perhaps a little bit more kind of easy to grasp, is that childlessness is a living loss or a non-death grief. One of the difficulties of grieving childlessness, by whatever reason you came into childlessness, is that often we don't know that we're grieving. Because it's a socially unacceptable grief, people don't talk about it as grief. For me, my journey was actually in my second year of my training to become a psychotherapist, and we were doing a training on bereavement, that I was thinking, hang on, this seems very, very familiar to me. And I went home from my lecture and I mapped out what I was learning about the grief process against my experience of childlessness. And I thought it was a perfect fit. And I thought, I'm grieving. And it was an enormous relief to me for 2 reasons. Number one, I thought this means I'm not losing my mind, because for those of you who've been through this journey or are in it, the internal cognitive reality of grief is very confusing. And also I thought, I don't know how, but one day, I know that grief is a process. I'm going to come out the other end of this. And that was also a huge relief, because I knew that I wasn't destined to remain in this place forever. And at that point, I really became a bit of a grief junkie. That was a decade ago, learned everything I could about it. And when I learned about disenfranchised grief, that was the piece that I really needed to understand. Because whenever I tried to talk about my experience as grief, people would say to me, oh, but you can't grieve something you haven't had. You know, that is the disenfranchised part of it. It's like, basically, you're not feeling what you're feeling. Well, newsflash, you can grieve something you've never had. And you need to. Also, one of the complicated things about the grief of childlessness is that it is a living loss that occurs over the lifetime. It's not just holding a baby in our arms that we grieve. It's not taking them for that first day at school. It's not helping them grow up. It's not perhaps sending them off to college or university. It's not perhaps going to their weddings, and maybe even becoming a grandmother one day. It's also about looking towards our elder years without the comfort of thinking that hopefully we will have children and grandchildren to accompany us in that passage. So over the course of a lifetime, there are many different aspects to childless grief, and it can be quite overwhelming at first to contemplate that. But what I learned is that grief is not the problem. Grief is actually the solution. Grief is the social and emotional human psychological and physiological construct that enables us to deal with devastating and irrevocable loss, heal our hearts, create a new identity for ourselves, and move forward with our lives. It doesn't mean that we don't feel sad about our childlessness sometimes, but we integrate the loss of our children into our hearts, into our identity. We become different people. And our journey to recovering from childlessness is just as profound and just as life-changing as the journey to becoming a parent. We are forever changed by coming to terms with our childlessness. We are different people. We have a new identity afterwards. A decade ago, the most important thing you needed to know about me was that I was childless. It was like, hi, my name's Jody and I'm childless. Now, my childlessness is part of me. It's like, I'm Jody, I'm a writer, I'm a social entrepreneur, I'm a dog mum, I'm a partner, I'm a daughter, I'm many, many things. I'm also childless. My childlessness is now part of the context of who I am. It is not who I am. And I owe that transformation to grief. Grief is a wise teacher, but we live in grief-phobic societies that don't help us to understand the gift and the power of grief and how to support each other with it. And the most important thing our grief needs is company. We need other women like us, other men like us. We can look them in the eyes when we're telling them our story and they get it. And they don't close us down and they don't tell us that we're not feeling what we're feeling. And they don't mind how many times we need to talk about it until we have integrated that part of our story into our hearts and we start to move on just a little bit more. So if I have one hope for National Infertility Awareness Week, is that there is a greater understanding that we need each other to grieve our losses. And just as sometimes we need, say, it takes a whole village to raise a child, it takes a whole village to heal a childless woman. And I hope that together we can be that village for each other. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful, Jody. Now it is a pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Sigal Klimstein, a clinician specializing in reproductive endocrinology and infertility who practices at Envia Fertility Specialists in Chicago, Illinois. She completed her residency and fellowship at Harvard University. During this time, she also completed a fellowship in medical ethics at the Harvard Center for Bioethics. In addition to running a clinical practice, she writes and lectures on reproductive ethics. Dr. Klimstein is formerly chaired the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists Committee on Ethics and is currently the chair for the American Society of Reproductive Medicine's Ethics Committee. She is also involved in medical student and resident education in her role as assistant professor at the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sigal Klimstein.
Thank you so much. I'm really humbled and honored to be here, and I so appreciate. I am trying to share my screen, Jobi. I don't know if I can do that. It says I'm sharing it, but I don't see that.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
No. All right. Well, I can do the presentation without the screen. You know, as doctors, we kind of don't give talks without slides, but
yeah.
It's okay. So no, thank you very much. And, you know, I wanted to talk a little bit about endings and beginnings and kind of talk about the fact that you have to close one chapter before you open another and what the role is of the physician really is in that transition. And so for sure, there are many elusive diagnoses, and many times women who have gone through many years and many treatments don't always know exactly what is the cause of their infertility, whether it's recurrent pregnancy loss or women who continue to implant embryos and the embryos don't take, or women who are told they have poor quality embryos, or who perhaps don't even create embryos. It's very frustrating because the root causes are often unknown. And I feel like sometimes this lack of knowledge holds us back from moving forward and healing ourselves and being able to move beyond infertility. And
a little technical difficulties. She will be back. She will be back. So what we're going to do is take a quick break. So as we're waiting for Dr. Clemstein to come back, I also want to talk to her about, in raising awareness for infertility that doesn't result with pregnancy or a child. I often speak with involuntarily childless women throughout the world, and the most frequent grievance, and a lot of you watching can attest to this, is that they don't feel like the doctors listen to them when they're at the end of their infertility journey and reflecting back on that. And so most of us waited years, some even decades, and like I mentioned, 20 years for me for a proper diagnosis, and some are still left undiagnosed. So Dr. Clemstein will be talking to us about all of that and touching on also the long-term physical and mental effects of infertility, because for a lot of us, that also means countless doctor visits, infertility treatments, medications, etc. So you also have to think about all of the physical and mental effects that could do on one person for all of those years. So we're just gonna wait for her. Let me chat with Jody until she comes back. Hey, Jody.
Hi.
Jody, can you tell us, while we're waiting for her, Dr. Clemstein to come back, can you tell us about Bart talked about the state of infertility. Can you tell us a little bit about the state of female childlessness?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You mentioned a statistic of 1 in 5. That is the average in the developed world, but it does vary from country to country and age group to age group. Also, each country collects the data differently, so it can be really difficult to compare them. But I do a big analysis of it in chapter 2 of my book. But it's 1 in 6 at the moment in the US. It's 1 in 5 in the moment in the UK, but it's as high as 1 in 3 in Germany and Japan. And in some of the more traditional, still family-oriented Catholic countries like Ireland, Spain, and Italy, it's as high as 1 in 4. So it does vary a lot. And it was 1 in 5 until very recently in the US. Early data would suggest that the millennial generation, the eldest of whom are sort of just turning 40, are probably going to see much higher numbers of childlessness, both involuntary and voluntary. The early statistics of the number of them that are still childless at age 30, which is, a considerably helpful marker for later childlessness, is much, much higher than their mother's generation. Now, a lot of women, of course, are having families later, but the numbers are still so significantly higher that it does predict there is a real bump in childlessness coming, which is why the work we're doing here today is so important, because we would like there to be support there for the next generation of childless women, so they don't feel so alone or wait 20 years for diagnosis and treatment like you did.
Okay, so I'm looking at some of the comments, and Emily says, I thought it was 1 in 8. So 1 in 8 is actually infertility couples. That's the statistic for them, Emily, just so you know that.
And that also is going up. I've read it's 1 in 6 in some countries. So that is also changing, because we're seeing some big changes in male fertility patterns and also people trying for families later in life.
So until we get Dr. Clemstein back, I'm just reading these comments. She said, my doctor told me to get a boyfriend and come back if I need to, after I ran out of money to try again. Well, that wasn't nice, and I'm sorry that you had that experience. And what do you think about that comment, Jody?
Well, it's difficult because it also, those kinds of comments, unempathic comments, really imply that, number one, getting a boyfriend is just like this thing like going to the shops. Probably the number one reason that women are childless by circumstance that I know of is not having a willing or suitable partner, during their fertile years. And also not everyone has the money for treatments, or it just implies that the solutions are all really easy and simple. And that's not very empathic, because this is, as Barbara said, everyone's journey is complex.
Yeah. Okay, let me take that off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring on Lisa Schumann while we're waiting on Dr. Segal, okay? All right. Okay, so I'm happy to introduce you to Lisa Schumann, a licensed therapist for more than 2 decades, and currently the director of mental health services for the Reproductive Medicine Associates of Connecticut and Gay Parents to Be. In her many years of treating patients, she came to understand that the guidance, support, and education she provided could make lives easier. And to fill that need, in 2015, she founded the Center for Family Building to provide trusted, comprehensive resources, products, videos, counseling services, support programs, and more. As the principal investigator for many research studies, Ms. Schumann was honored with 3 awards by the American Society for Reproductive Medicine and the Pacific Coast Reproductive Society. She is the former chair of the American Society of Reproductive Medicine and teaches other medical health professionals how to understand all patient journeys, including childless and child-free living. Ms. Schumann sat on the board for the American Infertility Association and was a group leader for Resolve. She also received an undergraduate degree from Northwestern University and her graduate degree at Yeshiva University. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jobi. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. And I just want to mention, I work for the mental health group for the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. And in all of the work that I've done, and as you mentioned, I have learned so much through these years and my 2 decades of experience in not just helping people with their infertility journeys, but also supporting them through their childless living. And so I'm so grateful to be here, and so grateful to all the speakers who've come before me. It's a real esteemed group, and I'm grateful to be part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, being childless by infertility is something that you can't change, but you can change how you move forward in the present and future. So can you give us some specific strategies to cope with intense emotions that can be used to heal infertility, trauma, and grief?
Yes. So, as my previous speakers mentioned, there is this disfranchised grief, and loss comes in so many ways, and no one's journey is correct. No one's grief is correct. Everyone has to grieve in their own way. And I see people who grieve in all different ways and in all different lengths of time. I think, if we think a little bit about where we're going in terms of our grief, I think it's also helpful to think about where we are, particularly those of us who've had infertility in the past. And so if we think about the struggle for infertility, it's often marked by this sense of a loss of control. So you have the grief and the loss. Maybe you have the loss of your fertility because you maybe even are thinking about adoption, but you're no longer going to have a genetically related child. But then if you're not going to adopt, then you have to grieve the loss of your fertility and also of being a parent, right? And so you also have the losses that come with the infertility journey. You have the losses of your income, of the dreamt of child, of all the things my previous speakers spoke of. And so there's so many losses there. And then there's this compounding experience of feeling out of control, right? Not in control of your experience in fertility treatment, and really not only having the grief, but really being in the passenger seat, feeling like you're in the passenger seat over and over again. And that can be so destabilizing. As we know, our bodies are not meant to have this repeated trauma of feeling this loss of control over and over and over again. And so we have this huge buildup of cortisol in our bodies, and we feel depressed, we get exhausted, it's bad for our heart, it's bad for our health in every way. And so once we get to a place where we are not having children and you've completed your fertility journey or whatever you've decided or are able to do, then what? You're left with this depleted experience where you feel really sad and lonely. And as you said, as Jody said, the grief can be a real gift in so many ways, but it certainly doesn't feel like that to many people, right? At the beginning, it's hard to imagine that. And so I think those are really wise words to hold on to. But I also think it is really helpful to think about how do we proceed through that experience. So I think that, as I said, there's many ways to grieve, and some people grieve very slowly, and some people grieve more quickly. The key is really that you should know that the turning point can be when you take the sting out of it. We have losses in so many places in our lives, but if we think about other losses, they can still hurt or still feel sad without that initial sting, right? When we don't feel that intense hurt and pain, and the sting starts to come out of it, and that will happen as we grieve, right? We will remember maybe we were sad about our inability to have a child the same time that our sister had a child, or maybe we're not going to take our child to school for the first day, or maybe we're not going to grow old with children. But we don't feel that same sting. We may think about it over time and think, oh, I remember that, right? Even after we've built our lives, even if we've made our lives whole, the sting is taken out of it. And then the other piece is this loss of control. What do we think about when we think about the loss of control? It's so important to put some control back into our lives. And how do we do that? There are many things that we can do, and certainly I'm happy for all of your audience to respond to any questions you might have. You can reach out to me, and I also have an ebook on my Instagram page that's absolutely free about managing some of these emotions. But it's really important to try to build some control in your life, because so much of this experience has been feeling out of control. It's important to think about what your sense of purpose is. What are the things that you'd like to contribute in life? One of the developmental phases that we all go through as we get older is we'd like to leave something behind. We'd like to have purpose. We want to have meaning in life. And it's so important to have that. So how can we do that without children? Are there things that we can think about that will help us have a more meaningful life? Can we think about hobbies? And it doesn't mean that we have to take on a whole nother career or change our lives completely. But if we can start to pick at the things that maybe give us pleasure, that give us joy, that give us meaning, and start to add those things into our lives, we can start to rebuild our lives a little bit and feel a little bit more whole. So what we need to do, in summary, is to think about this grief and loss and the pain involved in it, and to really try to capture everything that we can so we can be whole. As Jody said, it's really helpful to see it as a gift and grow and learn, but we also want to try to find ways to minimize our pain so we can take the sting out of it. And on the other hand, we also want to build up this experience of joy, of hope, of meaning. And so both of these things we can do at the same time. They don't have to happen in isolation. And that way, I think it can be helpful to get to where we want to be, where our lives can be more meaningful and full with or without children. So I hope that helps. And thank you so much for having me on your show.
Hello, we're going to bring back Dr. Klimstein. Hey, Dr.
Um,
Christie.
Apologies for the technical difficulties.
No, I really do think I did that. So I'll take that.
You know what?
All
We won't use slides and all will be well. So
right. So we'll get back to your presentation. So when you left, I was mentioning that there's a lot of long-term physical and mental effects on infertility from the countless doctor's visits with infertility treatments and medications. And so I just want you to touch on that and just start over.
yeah, no, thank you very much. And so I really like to think about this portion of the conversation as endings and beginnings, because you really can't start something until you've closed one chapter in your book. And the patients that come to me, you know, there are a lot of challenges, both from the physician and the patient side. A lot of these diagnoses are elusive. And so while we think medicine knows everything, it's not true. And it's very humbling often when you're faced with a person who has maybe recurrent pregnancy losses or IVF cycles that look great and they just don't result in pregnancy, or perhaps cycles where just embryos are not of good quality or just don't develop, or insemination cycles don't work, and all kinds of things. And the most frustrating thing is that we want answers. Physicians want answers, patients certainly want answers, and often the root causes are not known. And so we have a lot of challenges with this. One of them is exhaustion of resources. And I don't mean financial, although that's a critical part of the picture, but also physical resources, multiple visits, blood draws, procedures. And then there are emotional and social resources. There's an effect on your sense of self as you're going through this, because it can be all encompassing, both because of the time and the emotional and the financial commitment to go through infertility. There are relationship effects, of course, repeated disappointments and what that does to one's psyche, and the need to reframe your goals. Certainly the financial aspects can't be minimized. And so the question really, I think that is critical at the beginning, at kind of at the crux of all of this, is when does one door close and another open? And I like to look at this as sort of a balance between optimism and reality. As physicians, we always have the patient that had multiple disappointments and finally got pregnant, or the person we didn't think would succeed in achieving pregnancy and does. And we hold on to those perhaps a little bit too tightly. And sometimes we do a disservice. Certainly patients, read stories, they think I'm going to be the one in a million. And I think there needs to be some sort of give and take and conversation to understand what the realities are. As Jobi said, I chair the ethics committee for the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. And we have an opinion which we revisit every few years, and we think long and hard about on poor prognosis and futility. And so we call futility as any treatment that has a less than 1% chance of success, and very poor prognosis having somewhere between 1 and 5%. But that really doesn't do anything for the patient sitting in front of you who doesn't know if they'll succeed or not, and she wants some sort of a guidance. And so oftentimes you get to a point where success is not likely. It's not zero, but it's not likely, and it's time to think towards the future. And so we talk in this opinion, and I talk often with my patients about what I call closure cycles. Let's do one more thing so that you feel like you've done everything, but after you've done everything, you can move on and you can close one door and then walk to your future and not look back and say that there's some things, no stone left unturned. Perhaps that's a cycle, perhaps that's a period of time you're willing to continue to try. But I think it's really important as a physician to be very honest with the patient and find this closure. And then I wanted to talk just for a second about how medicine gets it wrong. Like I said, we as doctors tend to be overly optimistic. Patients come to us to have babies, and if we don't achieve that goal, we feel like we've failed. And sometimes patients come to us for answers why they're not able to conceive. They come to us for closure. It's our responsibility to provide these answers as well. And science, as much as it's wonderful and as much as it's moving forward and as much as we know so much more than we did a decade or a century ago, doesn't know everything. We need to be honest about chances of success and honest about what we don't know. And we need to give women space to change their priorities as they go through the process of fertility. And then in the end, there's the most important part is moving towards acceptance. And in this, shared decision-making is key. Having an honest conversation with your patient, having a space for the patient to ask the questions that she needs to ask in order to understand what's going on and in order to make the decisions that she feels good about in terms of the future. And this is, I think, really empowering for patients. It's important to listen. Every woman is unique. Every woman has a different range of options that she can, wants to, is willing to try. And I think that it is important to also look beyond the next treatment. There's always another option until there isn't. And you need to be aware of when that option isn't there and when it's time to move ahead. And each woman will have a different threshold and willingness for when she's ready to cross over to child-free living. And this may change over time. But what I think is critical is to look, none of us have unlimited open doors in front of us. There's always things that we can do and things we can't do. But there's certainly always open doors. And it's really important to close some doors so that we can move on and we can look back and say, we tried this, that was part of our life. Now it's time to move ahead. There's so many other wonderful things that are enriching and amazing in our lives. And if we just let go of that constant focus on the fertility, we see that there's a whole other world out there. And so with that, I will end, and happy to answer questions at the end. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Hello. So how did everybody like the panelists? They were awesome, right? So let me read some of your comments. Let's go through some of your comments to see what you all are saying. So someone anonymous said, closure cycles. Thank you for being so empathetic, Dr. Klimstein. And Cynthia Gail Bickers Bowen said, such an informative forum. Thank you, ladies, for sharing. I'm glad you're here. That's my auntie. Thembo Niskosi said, but during sex is painful. Oh, I should have read this first. Wait a minute. Okay. During sex is painful. I get dry during sex. This is a tough journey. Struggling to conceive more than 12 years. My emotions are playing with me lately, and it's a challenge. I will actually bring that back so our panelists can talk about that. So that's a really good subject and comment and question. All right, so let me bring on my panelist. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Okay. So we have some questions. Let's see. So one question was, for Lisa, what are some specific strategies we can use to help diminish the pain?
Well, thank you for the question. There's a lot of strategies, and as I said, I have a whole booklet of them in an ebook that's completely free on my Instagram page. So if you want to look at this Center for Family Building, you can access that. I have a whole list of them in instructions. So I really want to help as much as I can. There are lots and lots of stress reduction strategies. What's really important to remember is that there's no one stress reduction strategy that works for everyone. And it doesn't mean that if one thing works for you now, it'll work for you later. So it's really important to be flexible about it. It's really more like going to a buffet and choosing the things that you like rather than just being handed a meal. There's great meditation apps that are absolutely free. I think that there's great videos online for techniques like tapping, which is a very good technique to release stress immediately. I think meditation and yoga are fantastic. So there are many, many reduction strategies, and you need to find what works for you. But as I also said, if you are grieving, I think it's also important to remember.
Did we lose her? Okay, so I want to bring back that comment that I was reading earlier. If anyone wants to talk, answer her or comment on what she said. So, Dr. Clemson, you may be good to comment on this as far as painful sex.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that women face is that when you're trying, you know that the window of ovulation is small, and there's only a certain time every month that you can try. And there's so much anxiety, sex becomes not fun, it becomes work, and it becomes just for reproduction. There's a lot of psychological and emotional overlay to that. What I would say is certainly, in this case, there could be a physical problem, there could be an emotional issue, but it's very common to see that, it's even more frustrating when women say, I need to have sex tonight, and if it doesn't work tonight, what's going to happen? And I've ruined my chance, and what if I never get pregnant? And so the strategy is to sort of step away. I think patients like, try to kind of forget you're ovulating, do something fun, have a glass of wine, go out to dinner, just spend time together. But I do think that there's sort of stress, and there's the stress of being stressed, and that doesn't help women. And so whatever you can do to decrease that and to sort of focus more on the relationship and not on the sort of act of reproduction, is so hard to do. I don't say that lightly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I had an anonymous question for Barb. It is, would you please tell us about some of the advocacy efforts, such as Advocacy Day?
Yeah, one of the things, listening to all these speakers, by the way, Jobi, you put together just such a great panel, so much wisdom here. And from my perspective, from Results perspective, we're trying to ensure that whatever options and choices that you choose to make in trying to build your family, that they are open and available to you, that there's no barriers, whether those are financial barriers or legal barriers, regulatory barriers. So what we're working on is a number of different facets of trying to ensure that insurance in the United States covers all the medical treatments that you may want to choose, and that those medical treatments are available to everyone. You don't have to be married. You don't have to be in a same, heterosexual relationship. So we're working on issues that in the U.S. Congress. So you can come to our Advocacy Day. It's going to be virtual. It's in June, on June 17th, and you're going to meet with your members of Congress. You're going to talk about a lot of the issues that are really important to our community. There's a lot of bills right now in the legislature that help us. And then at the state level, we are working in a number of states to try and get insurance laws passed, but we're also fighting bad bills. There are bills that would make it really hard for people to adopt. Have been bills that make it hard for people to sometimes access care like IVF. So come on, this is 2021. We should be allowing people to build their family however they want. And so our job is to really fight those barriers and to do everything we can. Our goal is that you have all choices and options available to you, and that those barriers aren't getting in the way of you trying to pursue your next option and the next part of your journey.
Okay, so that seems like it's for women who are still trying to conceive, but for us who are childless by infertility, there are so many things that I want to hopefully partner with you with as far as the public policies to focus on us. Do you have anything for that? Because even like with if you have a child, you get a certain amount of money because of the stimulus now. And it's like, we're struggling. Just because we don't have kids don't mean that we don't need help as well from the government. So it's just different things like that sometimes affects us. And then psychological help and support, with the mental health part of life after infertility.
I think too, what I just want to say there is, for those who are on their infertility journey, if our goal is that when you say, enough is enough, that you haven't expended all of your money. Jobi, we know that people who are childless not by choice, who went through infertility, They may be at a place where they exhausted a lot of money. They went through a huge emotional toll during that journey, right? So what we want to see is that financial toll, that you are not left in a destitute place at the end of this, and that you interact with people like Lisa throughout your journey, and so that when you get to that place where it's time to move on, you're in a better place emotionally, and you have the supportive community, and you can find your place. So I think that some of those policy changes may not help what you're saying today, but they're going to help the person coming behind you have it hopefully a slightly better, even if they're ending up childless. And I think there are opportunities for us to work on policy issues for the people who are now childless, not by choice, and how can our healthcare system and others support them in a better way. I absolutely think there's opportunities.
Okay, thank you. We have an anonymous question from says, grief is the solution. Thank you for that profound perspective, Jody. Would you please give us some specific tools we can use to help us grieve to heal?
Thank you. It would be lovely if there was a list. I had a go at writing one in my book. I actually wrote, it's called the Feel Good Menu. And it's a menu of options you can kind of choose from, that you can print out and choose different ones, because I agree with what Lisa was saying, is not everything's going to work for you to alleviate your pain. I think probably the most important thing you need is to find empathic others. That was the key for me in beginning to do what I call my grief work. So you need to find, grief is a social emotion. It is a form of love. It needs to be held in another heart. Otherwise, it just gets stuck. And a lot of the things we associate with grief is actually grief which isn't kind of being processed. It's grief that's got stuck because it's not in connection with another. And that can come online, that support. It's that empathic connection is probably the most important tool I can suggest. We cannot grieve on our own, in our rooms, in our heads. That is probably the most important thing. You need others, and it can start with a book, with an online community. That can really, really help. That's probably the most important tool there is.
Okay, I have a question for Dr. Klimstein. People often tell me I should be open to, Jennifer says, people often tell me I should be open to all options because I'm still young. But I felt that the treatment options were not right for me, and I was not comfortable with them. Is it bad that my thresholds, like Dr. Klimstein noted, are lower for medical treatments?
Yeah, no, I think this is a really interesting question. And what I try to do when people come to see me for infertility is assess sort of what their goals are. Because some people come and they say, I would never do IVF. I'll try IUI, and if that works, great. And if not, I feel okay, and I'll have my closure and I'll move on. And other people say, I'll do anything. And then, it's a very different conversation of like, you're not going to succeed. I don't want to put you through this. And maybe it's time to stop. And so I find myself sort of on both ends of that spectrum. But what I think is really important is to have this open dialogue and to find a physician that you can communicate with who isn't going to offer you treatments that aren't right for you. It doesn't help me at all if I offer a patient a treatment that they would never want, or if I'm not aggressive and they really want to be aggressive and I say, I think you should stop, but they're not ready. So it's really a fine balance. And I think, no, it's absolutely not bad that your thresholds are different. I think everybody has, we're all different human beings and unique in our approach to life, and all of our thresholds are different. What's important is to find a good doctor-patient relationship where you can feel that you're being heard and that your thresholds are being validated, and that you can do what's right for you, both in terms of your reproduction and in terms of your well-being beyond that. So thank you for that question. Very, very important.
Okay, I have another question. Keter Creator says, psychological help? I moved on into a desert of no acknowledgement, support, or empathy for the trauma of trying and failing to create my family. Lisa is not on here. She's having a little technical difficulty. So does anybody want to touch on this? Okay. Jody?
Yeah, I can speak to this because this is something I experienced, and I hear so much from those women who find Gateway Women, is this sense of just having tried to get other people to understand and support them, and having met with either silence or worse. A lot of what we call bingos, oh, aren't you over that yet? Oh, kids are too much trouble here. Have one of mine. These kind of terribly unempathic statements that even people who are quite empathic about other things can just trot out, and they're incredibly upsetting. Unfortunately, also within the medical community and within the therapeutic community, there's often not an understanding of the trauma that can come after fertility treatments and childlessness. We need to do a lot of education within the therapeutic communities too. Sadly, a statistic I quote in my book is that more than 50% of women who have had fertility treatments do experience some form of PTSD, which, compared to 8% of the general population. There is a huge amount of work that needs to be done in post-care for infertility patients, both those who go on to have children and those who remain childless. And it's difficult because often what I'm hearing is that a lot of clients of fertility institutions just want to get as far away from them as possible. So perhaps some of the care that's being offered, some of the post-treatment care is not being taken up. So there needs to be another net to kind of really capture the aftercare for infertility treatments. I think it's a real missing piece, whether you end up childless or not.
Okay. And let's see. Lisa, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay. All right.
Sorry about the technical difficulty here.
Not a problem. It's live. That's what happens. All right. So here's another. Davo says it's a challenge. I have been diagnosed that I have fibroids, but the doctor refused to refer me to surgery, saying the fibroids are too small for removal. Dr. Klimstein, can you talk on that?
Yeah, there are lots of doctors, right? So I think if you feel like you need a treatment and you're not getting the answers you need, it's absolutely fine to get a second opinion, and you shouldn't feel like you have to stick with one particular provider. I mean, yes, there are communities where there's only one particular doctor, but I think that's more rare. And I always, recommend second opinions. Not every doctor is right for every patient, and it may be, that you don't need surgery. It may be that you do. But you don't feel comfortable with the advice you're getting, so certainly seek another opinion.
Absolutely. I'm messaging. All right, let's see. Another question. Well, let me do some comments. So Julie Anthony says, love this. Thanks for sharing the reality that closing a door should be considered. And that's why I'm very careful at using the word give up. Yeah, because it's not giving up. It's just imagine years, sometimes even decades of you trying to conceive is not happening. At some point, it's the psychological and physical effects is going to catch up. So it's not giving up. So never think that you're giving up. No. You did the best you could.
And I just want to add to that, look, I strongly urge people who may still be on their journey, to anyone who's listening, is to get access to psychological help and support. Even if you're like, oh, I'm feeling good. This is a trying journey. I say to people, respect the infertility journey and respect what it's doing to your emotional health as well. And so get together with others, find professionals like Lisa, they're experts in this, and take care of yourself, because you need to be healthy to make those next decisions, Jobi, and need to be in a good place And I don't think we fully appreciate how emotionally trying this is until we are so destitute at the end of it. And that's not what we want to see. You should be in a healthy place making those decisions along the way, not ever feeling like you're giving up.
Absolutely. So we're going to close the panel unless anyone has any more questions, pressing questions for our panelists. You got a couple of more minutes to put in your questions. If not, we're going to conclude the panel discussion so we can move into our keynote speech. All right. Someone said, made a comment saying, anonymous said, it's refreshing to hear a doctor say that medicine doesn't have all the answers. I think those outside our community especially need to remember that. So that was a really good comment for Dr. Klimstein.
Thank you. It's humbling over time. I think we all start right out the door thinking we know everything, and time and experience humbles us. So thank you for that.
All right. So does anyone have any, the dreadful unsolicited advice and comments that are given to women who are childless, not by choice. And one of the main ones is, why don't you just adopt? And I know that a couple of you all on this forum are advocates of family building, but that is definitely an insensitive comment because, first of all, I talk to childless women every day throughout the world, and that's an assumption that they never tried to adopt in the first place. A lot of them have had failed adoption attempts or bad experiences, or they just can't afford it because adoption isn't as easy as you think it is. It's a long, tedious process, and it's expensive. It can get expensive. So what do you say to Jody? I'll give you this one, or Lisa, to the person who says, why don't you just adopt?
Let me hand it to Lisa because I've spoken a lot.
How you feel and who the audience is. Those two factors are really important. You might be in a situation where you don't want to answer the question, and if it's someone just in the supermarket or someone you don't care about, you might want to just give them an answer like, you have no idea how hard it is, or yeah, maybe I'll try that, and just get out of it and minimize the discomfort that you're going to face. But if it's somebody who's closer to you and you really feel that it's important to have that conversation with them, then I think the greatest resource, and I tell my patients every day, is to go to Resolve. There is so much great information, and sending your family and friends to Resolve so they can see and get information about how painful the journey is, because people don't understand it if they haven't been through it. So I think that it's really important for people that you care about, when you have the bandwidth, when you feel that it's important for them to know, send them to Resolve. And if you don't care, find a quick answer and move on, because you don't want to give yourself more pain than you already have.
Okay, and I have a final question, I believe. Thanks so much, Jobi. Any suggestions on how to reintegrate back into former friendships which were cut as a trauma response to being childless, not by choice? So I'll put that to either Jody, who probably, with her gateway community, I'm sure you have many women who have experienced this.
Yes. I'd say I actually call childlessness sometimes the hashtag friendship apocalypse, because it can have such a devastating effect on our social circle as our friends and family move into family life. For many women, myself included, absolutely everybody else I knew apart from me became a parent, and it was extremely painful that my friends were unable to see how hard that was for me. Some of those friendships did survive because those women were ones who had the capacity and the interest to try and understand a little bit of my experience, but some of them just kind of didn't really make it. I think coming back into friendships at a later date may require, I think probably the most important and helpful thing is that your need to be understood as a childless woman, and how hard sometimes friendships with others who have families are. That part of you needs to be really understood. And what I found, many of the women in the Gateway Women community have found, is if you can get that understanding from other childless women, if you can get that part of your tank kind of topped up, it makes then perhaps going into a family situation or a friendship situation where they may not be super empathic about that part of your life, but they have so much else to offer. If you don't go to the hardware store to milk and expect them to understand everything about your childlessness, but just allow them to understand a bit about it, and it can help. Not everyone has the capacity to extend themselves to understand what it's like to be us. And sometimes that's okay. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes the relationship is precious enough to survive that lack of equality in your awareness about each other. So it's going to be, I'd say, make sure you have your childless friends in your back pocket on your phone. I would also say bookend those meetings. So speak to your childless friends beforehand, speak to your childless friends after those meetings, keep them short at first, and look after your tender heart. It can be really hard.
Mm.
Okay, I have an anonymous question for Dr. Klimstein. As far as the hard to diagnose medical conditions, someone was saying the other day, I think it was Brandi, she was saying that endometriosis was discovered in 1860, yet it takes 8 to 10 years for a diagnosis, and for some folks, like I mentioned, 20 years. So why does it take so long, number one, and how does endometriosis cause infertility?
Yeah, endometriosis is such a difficult disorder because, one, some women have terrible endometriosis and don't have infertility and don't have pain. And some women have very mild endometriosis and it causes them pain and infertility, or one or the other. And the only way to truly diagnose is surgically. And our field is moving a little bit away from surgery. And a lot of the more recent studies have shown, for example, that if you're going to do IVF, you don't have better outcomes if you operate first. And so it's very difficult, and sometimes it's not very clear what the right approach is. And so it often takes a long time because we're kind of moving away from surgery, and we're a little bit more surgery averse because other treatments can be so successful. It takes oftentimes longer to diagnose endometriosis. And the other, like I said, the other problem with it is that it doesn't always, the amount of disease doesn't always correlate to the amount of symptoms. And so I would say that if you're suspicious you might have endometriosis and you're willing to do an outpatient surgical procedure, laparoscopy, it's certainly worthwhile to do that, at least to understand why you might be having pain, or to rule that out, or infertility. So it's definitely a challenge for us as physicians, not just for patients, to find the right balance between operating and not. Surgery has risks as well, and so we're always trying to balance those.
Okay, I have a final question for Lisa. It's an anonymous question. What are some key steps for handling stress for life after infertility?
Okay, so dealing with stress when you're having life after infertility. So in other words, once you've already established your life, I'm assuming, and I'm not sure exactly of the question, but I think that maybe what the person who's asking the question is, how do you go on with your life and then deal with the aftermath of being infertile and having a childless life and still feeling joy and meaning in your life. And so, as I started to say before, I think it's really helpful to start to be proactive about that as soon as you can, to start to think about things that will give your life fulfillment, that will give your life joy, that will give your life happiness, to start on that project alone if you're single, or with your partner, that you're going to build a life that's going to make you feel good. And hopefully, as you go down this journey at the same time of grieving your infertility, you've also at the same time been able to soothe some of that pain that's associated with the infertility. Now, although it's not the same, many of us have lost people that we love, right? And when we think about them, you know, maybe on their birthdays, we maybe shed a tear, or we feel a little pang in our hearts, but it doesn't have that same intense feeling as it did in the beginning. And so I think that dealing with the grief and also dealing with building a good life are both active things that you can do. And when you feel active and you put your energy into something and you see the benefits from it, it can be very stabilizing. So I think it's good to take a proactive role in dealing with the grief and dealing with building up your life. And so that when those times come, maybe you pass a playground or someone announces that they've gotten pregnant and you didn't expect that to happen, and you feel this little pang in your chest, then maybe it doesn't hurt as much. And at the same time, your life is more meaningful. You have more substance in your life. You have things that give you greater joy. And so you're also more resilient at the same time.
Well, since you just said something that made me think of something else, as far as managing triggers, when you mentioned baby showers, that's a trigger for many child is not by choice women, and also pregnancy announcements as well. So how are we able to start managing triggers?
Well, if you employ some of these stress reduction techniques, then that can help you manage those particular moments of pain or moments of sadness, we call them. It can help you with managing those moments of pain. But also at the same time, if you're dealing with your grief and mourning the loss, and at the same time building up a very full life for yourself, you'll have a stronger foundation underneath that. And so you can deal with the pain in the moment, but the pain itself will not be as intense. Yes, you're not inhuman, you're a human being. And so it may still trigger some response, but maybe on a scale from 1 to 10, it may trigger a 5 instead of a 10 in terms of hurt.
Okay.
And then as you go through it, hopefully you build up more and you have that foundation that gets stronger. And at the same time, you've grieved the loss. And so you don't feel as much pain.
Okay, well, I certainly appreciate all of the work that you all are doing, and I stand beside you in any way I can help. Thanks, Barbara Collura, Jody Day, Lisa Schumann, and Dr. Segal Klemstein for being a part of this conversation. Does anyone have any last words?
Thank you, Jobi.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us and putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so we're concluding the panel discussion, and I know we're a little behind, but listen, you want to stick around for this because we are going to have WNBA champion Simone Edwards to take the stage, and you don't want to miss her infectious energy and amazing storytelling. But before we begin and bring her on, let me just read some comments, and don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to YouTube. And also remember, although this event was free, this is also a fundraiser. So make sure to donate. To the partial proceeds will go to Resolve, the National Infertility Association, to help with advocacy, as Barb mentioned, the education, and really helping with the forefront. The rise of childlessness needs to go down, and the funding will definitely help with that, especially also with public policy. And you'll be surprised how much change that you can make. And also some of the proceeds will help to continue to have events like this, Advocacy for Us, the Childless Not by Choice community, and also to help us with programs, to help us with initiatives such as helping us with the psychological impact of childlessness, which is very important. So I want to, let's see. Okay, so now I am thrilled to bring even more motivation to you, our keynote speaker, WNBA champion Simone Edwards. She brings such an energetic perspective on what it takes to overcome obstacles and to step into the path of an unstoppable you. Simone, are you ready for us? Born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica, Simone Edwards, as a high school senior, was offered a full scholarship to an American college, but only if she learned how to play basketball. After accepting the challenge, Simone attended Seminole State College in Seminole, Oklahoma, leading the team to an undefeated conference record, ranking the National Junior College Athletic Association top 10. During her tenure, she was the recipient of several top sports awards and became the first Kodak All-American in school's history. Her junior college success carried over her time as co-captain at Division I University of Iowa. Simone was signed to the WNBA New York Liberty during the 1997 inaugural season and became the first Jamaican player to be signed to the Women's National Basketball Association, better known as the WNBA. She also gained international prominence as a basketball star in Italy, Hungary, Israel, and Spain, leading teams to championships. In 2000, she signed with the Seattle Storm's inaugural team, frequently referred to as the Jamaican Hurricane and widely known for her infamous shimmy shake. She's going to have to teach me that. And ultimately becoming a WNBA champion in 2004. After a 6-year career with the Seattle Storm, Simone retired in 2006. She then went on to represent her home countries as a team captain on the Jamaica basketball women's national team, winning the country's first ever gold medal at the 2006 Caribbean Basketball Confederation Championship. And in 2014, she returned to the team as head coach, winning yet another gold medal. In 2017, the Jamaican government bestowed her with the Order of Distinction Award for her outstanding contribution to Jamaica's women's national basketball. Simone is currently the director of Jamaica National Youth Basketball and the founder of Simone for Children Foundation to uplift and educate underprivileged children in Jamaica. And she is also the author of Unstoppable, a memoir of adversity, perseverance, and triumph. And I'm a little biased because I co-wrote the book. But as life would have it, 13 years ago, Simone was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis. Yet with the heart and soul of a true champion, she uses her influence to raise awareness of the chronic disease. And speaking of awareness, don't forget we're doing a raffle for our donations. And if you give $10 or more, you'll be entered in a raffle and you will get a signed autograph. 8 winners will get a signed autograph of Simone's book. And we will also do a virtual meet and greet. And if you give $50 or more, you automatically win. And that doesn't count the 8 winners. So without further ado, WNBA champion will join our virtual stage with a powerful keynote address after this video presentation.
That was beautiful. Well, I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Jobi, for having all those great speakers on the panel. I really enjoyed them. And it's such a relief knowing that, there are so many communities out there. There are so many but you shouldn't say challenges where people can get help, especially with endometriosis, because I didn't even know all of that before, that there were all these different groups and, places that you could reach out to get help for endometriosis. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Grew up in Jamaica, in poverty, and while growing up, I was like, okay, what is my future going to hold for me? Here I am. I'm the baby. I'm the only girl, and I was like, how am I supposed to, be successful if my parents don't have money? I can't go to college. I just have to be athletic. And I was teased for being tall. And it just turned out that my height is the one that got me through all of this. So here I am now, on this path trying to help as many kids that have been bullied. But also, what hit me a few years ago was the fact that I ran into this thing, after playing, getting over all these obstacles, coming from Jamaica at 17, without my family here and, trying to survive, didn't know what I was going to do. All I know is that I have to stay focused. And now I am trying to, do my best to try to learn more and educate others, because once, I thought everything was stopped and I was good now. I finished playing, I have all this success in playing, and then I was hit with this pain and I didn't know where it came from. I was always an athlete, I took care of my body. I don't smoke, I don't drink. And then I went to the doctor, and just immediately that doctor, I'm listening to people saying that, oh, it took a while. Just immediately, I remember sitting in that room with the pain, and the doctor said, you have endometriosis. And I'm looking like, what the heck is that? I've never heard of it. I was like 32. I was like, I never heard of such a thing, endometriosis. And the doctor was explaining it to me, and I'm like, why me? Is at that point, like, what is happening here? What did I do to deserve this? I thought I'd go through all the tough periods in my life, and now you're saying this is what's going to happen. And immediately said, I need surgery. I'm like, I need surgery? So here I'm hit with this I didn't know about, and now you're telling me I need surgery. And I wasn't around family either. I'm never around family because I'm always traveling in different places. And I'm like, okay, now I'm angry at this point, because here you're saying you're going to take out one of my ovaries. And it's, it's one of those things you struggle with. And I think most women, it's like, I guess we go back to, trying to have kids and can't. And it's like, you feel like this is so unfair. You just feel like you're not fully a woman. And if they take out one of these, I was born with both of these. And then, when they took one out, and I remember being in the hospital, and the doctor came to me and said, it took over your whole, both ovaries, but, we try to save one just in case you want to have a child. And I was like, okay, I was still lost at this moment. I was really sad, and so I went home, and I didn't understand what was happening to me. I didn't know there was any community with it. I was just so angry at just being in this situation, why me again? And so, it just become like, I try to ignore it, right? I had that surgery, and I was just going on, I'm just going to be unstoppable. The unstoppable me, I'm going to do all these things and but then it just keep creeping up, after years, you're getting hit with. And the good thing about it, that I didn't go through all this pain a lot of people go through, even with my stage 4 endometriosis. I didn't have, harsh periods. It's just that one time when I felt that, and I went to the doctor, and so I was lucky in terms of that. But the one thing that I really struggled with was the fact that I had to be on birth control. And it's something I never wanted to be on. And so she said, this is how you're gonna, this is what will keep you going, to control the endometriosis. And so, but I just felt like, again, I was robbed, because a few years later, again, I had to have another surgery. And again, I was so angry, another surgery, because I was eating, I was getting all this upset stomach and this bad pain. And I ran to the urgent care, and all of a sudden I just had to go to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, you have some blockage, we got to go in and clean up. And again, now I have to go to, I have surgery again. And I'm like, come on, I just don't want this anymore. Again, I was afraid. I just didn't reach out, to try to find, I was reading about it, but I was just so still like, caught up in myself with this. I kept it inside of me, it wasn't one of those things that you felt you need a support group for or whatever, it's just one of those, they can't explain it anyway. So what's the difference? They just said, they don't tell me how it happened, it just happens. So I wasn't happy about it at all. But one of the things, I've learned through all of this is I went back again to when I was a child growing up in Jamaica before. And I remember, just sitting there, I'm sitting by we call it the gully. I'm sitting there and watching the water run, under the bridge. And I used to sit there and just wish, and I made conversation, with God. And I said, if you get me out of here, I am going to say, I'm going to come back and do all these amazing things with kids if you get me out of poverty. And, when I went to that track meet that Evelyn went to run, and for the first time I lost because I was a great athlete. I've never lost again. And I lost in this major track meet. And I was walking away and I was like, nobody's going to want me now, and these coaches called me over and said, hey, you're athletic, why don't you practice basketball when we give a scholarship? And I'm saying to myself, you know what, this just happened. It happens. Somebody just offered me a scholarship without me knowing the game. There got to be a reason for this. And everything in life that, when a challenge comes, I said, there got to be a reason for this. Okay. And so what I want to do is whatever I can do to tell anyone out there that's going through anything, you can be, you're having difficulty having a child. And I know a lot of people don't understand. They come with all this. I've listened to it all the time. They just feel like somehow blame the woman, or, they have a hard time understanding, and I listen to the doctors and other people ask about, the adoption thing and all of this stuff going on. But one thing I want you to know is that sometimes we get so caught up, which I did. I get so caught up in that which affects me, in terms of my endometriosis, how it affects my life in a way that I have to acknowledge that. I mean, it's endometriosis. It does affect your life. I'm going through it right now, the difficulty of it. But I was holding on to it for many years and just build up this anger and like, why me and all this stuff going on, that I tend not to focus on all the other great things that are happening around, just to balance out, because it's so important to know that our value and our worth doesn't change because these things are happening. Not because you can't have a child, not because you have endometriosis, not because we're dealing with all these things that affect relationships and all this stuff, not because we are incredible women. We're still amazing women. We are still powerful women. It doesn't take over a life. Only if we make it, it will be there, unfortunately, but you have so much going on for you. And you have to make sure there's a balance. And no matter what people say or they come, they have the right to their opinion. But you have to hold on to the fact that you are incredible beings. And this doesn't make you less a woman. This won't stop you from being successful in whatever path you want to take, because that's one thing I said, it's not going to stop me. And so many things I did, they wouldn't even understand I did it in pain while I have endometriosis, because it's there, but I say, you're not going to stop me. And I want to continue, to inspire and motivate, women that are going through, especially, this journey, because it's tough, it's painful, and not many people understand. And sometimes we just, when we're in that pain, it's hard to talk to a lot of people because they won't understand it. And, you get agitated. So unless you're around somebody who really cares about you, understand what you're going through sometimes. So you have to surround yourself with people who do understand and care about you, because it's going to give you a headache. It's going to just destroy you if you surround yourself with people who don't, or who's not even trying to. We can understand if they don't at the beginning, but if they're trying, we'll appreciate that. at least try to understand, learn more about what I'm going through before you judge me, before you cast these things on me. And again, it doesn't, we can't let what people say discourage us from being the incredible human beings we're meant to be. So don't feel less than, what you really were, because nobody else can tell you your value or worth. Nobody, only you. So I want you ladies out there to understand that you are unstoppable. No matter what's in front, you are unstoppable. Find that balance. Whenever this thing come over you, sometimes if you see, sometimes it's all around you, people with kids and in these beautiful babies pictures they're putting all over the web, and you can't get out of it, because it's there. But don't shut down for too long. Sometimes it's hard, but it's okay. And it's okay. And nobody can tell you how long to mourn or to get, nobody can tell you that. It's your journey. But what I'm telling you is that you got to find that support system. You got to find that balance. Find things that make you feel good. Find these things. Find people, that sees the beauty in you. Find people that's not judging you because you don't have a child. Find people that not judging you because you can't go out and do certain things because you're in a lot of pain. Find people that do understand. Surround yourself with these amazing people. And I'm glad there are all these groups out there. Connect to them. And I'm glad, Jobi, you brought all these, great panelists and these speakers and these doctors and people that have been in this field working. And you yourself, Jobi, I've watched you. You have, you are so passionate about, what you're doing, and you research and you try to create all of these, different avenues for people to, go down so that they can get the answers they need. And if you can't find the answers, you find people who can give the answers. And we truly appreciate that. And I truly appreciate all these people and the wonderful job they're doing to start groups and different things out there. So people like myself, can reach out to, and I know there are a lot of athletes like myself that are out there struggling with it, but keep it silent. We have it inside. We kept it inside for so long because we're, we just like, okay, but we don't have to anymore. And I'm definitely gonna, do my best to let them know that it's okay. There's so many groups out there. It's okay. So I'm so happy to be here and so happy to share my story with you. And I just hope that whatever you're going through at this moment, that life doesn't end that way. Your present circumstance does not dictate your future. That's one thing I go through when I was a child till now. I was pushing every time when I run into a wall, and people say, you can't do that. I took back-to-back knee surgery before the WNBA draft, and they say, people looking at me, oh, you're going to get it. You're going to get drafted. And I went to New York, over 300 girls, and I was one of the two that get up, and I had the braces on my knee. And I said, oh, I'm not going to be denied. I'm not going to be denied. And so with everything I do, and now, I have my foundation for kids. I love children, especially kids living in poverty, because I want them to see. I want to be an example for them to say that your present circumstance does not dictate your future. Because there's so many things you can do, not because you're poor, not because you don't have a child, not because it doesn't mean you can't live a passionate life with other things that you want and other things that you've accomplished, and acknowledge that and be proud of it. And it doesn't mean you're not because you're going through this, but I'm saying some of us just really get caught up in it that we lose focus of the other thing. It's going to be there. It's a part of you, but make other things be a part of you too. Don't just dwell on the things that affect you so much that it just let us go into a world as if we're less than. We're not. You deserve to be out there. You have a powerful voice. Okay? Again, you're worth everything that's out there that you deserve. So don't let anything stop you. Don't let your pain stop you. Don't let people discouragement stop you. Just be unstoppable. I just want to thank you all for having me. Thank you, Jobi, for making me part of this.
Listen, I love your present circumstances do not dictate your future. Like, that's real. That is real. So, Simone, I know I butchered the shimmy shake. So can you show us the real shimmy shake? The infamous shimmy shake. you go.
Yes, after the
Oh,
shot, that give me energy. Yes.
I'm telling you, that is a infamous Seattle Storm move for all of you WNBA fans out there. So, Simone, do you have time to stick around for a minute?
Sure.
All right. So, I want to get some comments. Let's see. My auntie. I'm gonna tell you, if nobody watching, my auntie gonna watch.
Hey, family support. I love it.
I am enjoying Simone. So sincere.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
also, an anonymous post said, Simone message to us. Thank you, Jobi, for bringing Simone's message to us. You're both so inspiring. And Marcia, I didn't mean. I'm sorry, that's my mama. I didn't mean to do that. I promise not just my family watching. But my mom said, keep those
You
speakers.
just say you got a village of support. That's important.
Yes. So,
that's important.
Yes. Simone Edwards, former WNBA professional basketball player. You know she always rooting for you.
Yes.
Story was very inspirational. You are appreciated by many. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Marcia.
And let's see. So Simone, how did you feel? Did you think that you were going to get chosen with one of 300? Well, what I mean, what you said, 3 of 300 women?
Around 300, a little over 300 women. Yeah.
And one of 3, 3 of 300? So
yeah.
did you think you were going to get picked when you got, what was it? How long, how many days was it?
It was 3 days. I think it was 3 days, and the worst part about it, I get seasick on the ferry. You have to take a ferry to go over there. So I was throwing up. I was so sick in that right over, and then I had to get ready for that tryout. So, but I was saying I was not going to be denied because it was my only way. Is either I go back. I didn't get to finish my master's in sports psychology because I couldn't afford it. My scholarship was up after my first year of my master's, and I need $25,000 to finish it. And I only had like $25 in my pocket, so that wasn't going to work. And so I said, it's my way of if I have to go back to Jamaica, and I wasn't ready yet. I didn't accomplish all that I said I was going to accomplish. And so, so I went back and I went out there and I gave it all I got. I don't know where I get that strength. I was just flying above the rim. I was sprinting. I didn't know where that extra strength came. It's just like one of those things in the door that. So it was like, I got to do. And I just waited. I gave it all I got, and then I just waited.
Yeah.
For that phone call.
Man, well, you know what? I really appreciate you and all of our amazing panelists for being a part of the inaugural Childless Not by Infertility Forum. I thank Not So Mommy for partnering with us this week for National Infertility Awareness Week, and for Resolve, the National Infertility Association, for being collaborative supporters with us this week to make sure that we brought our message to a larger scale, which is so important. So Simone, tell us about, since we're doing a raffle with a signed autograph book and a meet and greet, tell us a little bit about why you thought it was important to write your book.
Again, I was thinking about all those little boys and girls growing up in poverty. And it's easier for them to relate to someone that they think will understand their situation. And I think my story would be just that for them. I think it was important to share my story because it talks about just living in poverty and then running through all these obstacles to get to be a WNBA champion, to get to do all these things, travel the world, to get to play at the highest level. And so I just thought it was so important that a child, and it can inspire anyone, but I wanted a kid, live in the park can read it and say, wow, she did that. Especially one who's struggling with basketball, to know that the game is about skills. So I took a year to achieve all those things I did, compared to some people playing for years. So I want them to know. So when I'm teaching, I can draw their attention. I said, no, you can't use it as an excuse, because it's skill. I did it, so.
Well, I mean, okay. When I read your bio, it said that you did not even know how to play basketball. When you were 16, 17 years old. Like most people who learn how to play basketball learn as 5, 6, 7, I mean, were you determined or what? Like, what's the psyche of somebody who is so determined to get out of poverty? Like, walk us through that.
The thing is that when you're growing up, I had a happy childhood. I was poor, but I was happy. There are mango trees and fruit trees all over. So I was always having food, fruits to eat. But the thing is that I knew, I heard my mom, I couldn't afford it. I know my mom I hear her crying a lot of nights, and praying. And I thought that was the way to talk to God. I didn't know, I still do that. When I cry, I pray, because that's what she used to do. And I listened to her and I said, I have to be that kid that turns things around, so my mom would be so proud. I'm the only girl and a baby. And Joey, let me tell you something. When I was out there barefooted, because I didn't have any basketball shoes on that hot pavement because the courts were outside, at 16, saying I have to learn this game. When you start with basketball, it's just hard because I was awkward. You have to learn these skills and you don't have it. I have to learn within a year. And the pavement was hot and I was frustrated, but it always go back to the fact that I made a commitment that I'm going to make my mom proud. And if this is the sacrifice I have to make, I'm going to do it. And that's what it took. I'm going to tell you that I was walking home for 2 hours, or I had one bus fare. I either had to take the bus to the stadium and walk home, or I had to run to the stadium and take the bus home. So either way, it's going to cost me an hour and a half. And I didn't care at that point because I said, that's the sacrifice I had to make, the commitment I have to make. And there are a lot of times I'm going home crying because I feel like I'm failing, I'm frustrated, especially when those girls were bullying me, said, oh, she's awkward and everything. But I didn't give up. I couldn't, because I had to make my mom proud, my parents proud at least.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you so much, Simone, for being a part of this. And as another childless woman, talking to another childless woman, for being one of our champions who we root for and support. And someone who is actually in the thick of still going through stage 4 endometriosis. There's not a cure for endometriosis, but there is some relief. So I hope that you are able to find relief soon for endometriosis. And I thank you so much for your time with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jobi. And please continue to do this great work you're doing, and all the other panelists, all the great work y'all are doing, because there's so many women out there that needs it.
Thank you. To our audience, we will definitely have more of these, which will be inclusive to the Childless Not by Choice and Childless by Circumstance community. We're here to help you. We're all standing by you to give you everything that you need. Let me see if I have any final comments. John Boyan said, all of the speakers were awesome. Jobi, I really enjoyed hearing Simone, and her book is very inspiring. Thank you so much, John. Marcia Baldwin says that was a hurricane of a story. Yes. So, childless woman, you are beautiful. Child-free woman, you are enough. Although this journey might not be easy, but we're all in this together, so we will get through this together. So I want you to know that there are resources out there for you from tutumglobal.com. Tutum actually means safe in Latin, so you are safe. we provide a safe platform for you all childless women, to share their stories and to get support. And also notsomommy.com, founded by Brandi Lytle, who partnered with us this week. So I thank you all for being a part of this. And until next time, thanks for watching.